camera's kick on, I got a message for small business owners. If you are a small business owner, you know, a small family type of business, right, and you are proud of the goods and services that you offer, and some national, basically, publicity, visibility, etc., would help you succeed and help drive business your way, send me an email. That's AmericanReef@me.com, or you can go to AmericanReef.com and fill out the Contact American Reef form on that first page. Now, I don't have the details all baked out here, but the idea is relatively simple. I want to help the small businesses succeed. As you've heard me say, to me, small businesses have a stake in your success and actually the community's success. Whereas kind of large, international, kind of conglomerate companies, they're not designed to do that. So this is my way of kind of leveling that playing field a little bit, right? And giving some advertising to those small and, again, family-owned kind of businesses. I want to help them succeed. Over the years, I've had many conversations with American Reef viewers who kind of fell into various kind of small business categories. Like, for example, I know some viewers out there, they own jewelry shops, candy stores. They were into photography business, meaning they videotaped and photographed, weddings, things of that nature. The list kind of goes on and on. The idea is if your service can be either kind of fulfilled through e-commerce or you travel nationally to kind of perform that service, then again, I think it makes sense for us to talk. Again, I'd almost say that even if you're somebody who is considering open up a small family-owned shop, maybe a coral fragging business, for example, to kind of support your hobby. Whatever that is, my general criteria is, number one, it has to be good for the viewer. Number two, it has to be good for you as well. And so to me, it's one of those, if it's a win-win for everybody, then it makes sense for us to talk. Again, it's really simple. Send me an email, AmericanReef@me.com, or go to AmericanReef.com and fill out the Contact American Reef form on that first page. Now, today's video, we're going to talk about ways to manage coral growth. So ways to manage coral growth. Well, remember about a year or so ago, Mike Paletta actually took that sunlit SPS tank and converted it to grow LPS and softies. Well, ever since he did that, and he's getting growth kind of like crazy. And some corals are actually touching the surface area. Now, he had planned for that, right? Remember with the kind of the rocks that were stacked on that rod, for example? And he had talked about maybe wanting to kind of, again, take one of those rocks out as things started to grow. Well, things are starting to grow. And this episode, we're going to see how good that method works or doesn't work. Talk to me, Big Mike.
Hello, Russ. Today we're doing something that we sort of planned for and sort of has happened by just sheer serendipity. Obviously, this is my sunlight tank, and it is doing remarkably well. Compared with where we were at last year at this time, where I was having problems with the SPS, the soft corals and LPS that are in here love this sunlight, love the tank. A lot of them have really grown, and they've grown so much that they're now hitting the surface of the water.
Hold on. So let's back up for a second. Remember, everybody last year, tell everybody what you were doing to try to get the light under control.
Last year I was putting screening on top. I had a blue filter on top. I was doing everything possible to more or less cut down and control the light. This year I've put soft corals in instead. They love the sunlight as much as they can get. They're growing like weeds, so much so that I have to lower one part of the tank because they've literally grown to the surface from little tiny corals 3-4 months ago into big nice sized corals in a relatively short time. So it's been very quick growth, in what to me is the simplest tank that I maintain.
And you're doing none of that shading, no playing around with light.
I'm doing nothing. I have the same lights I had on last year. The sunlight, it's summer sunlight. It's still been bright and sunny in Pittsburgh, which sounds like a oxymoronism. But the corals have done well. The anemones have grown well. The fish are fine. And as I stated before, this is the simplest tank I run. I do a 10-gallon water change on it once a month. The only thing I'm adding to it is kalkwasser for the evaporation water. I have a simple skimmer and I have a Miracle Mud filter filled with Kato and Caulerpa. That's basically it. I mean, if you want to do a simple tank and you don't want to be putzing around like I do with the SPS corals, this is the way to go in my mind. And what else is interesting is a lot of people really like this tank because it's in my sunroom. In the summertime, we sit out here, you look at the tank with the sunlight going across, you have the glitter lines. It's just a really enjoyable tank to have. The fish have grown. I feed them 2 or 3 times a day, a little bit. There's not a ton of fish. There's no real big fish in here. The only downside is the aptasias also like this. I just found my aptasia zapper in the last couple of days. So for the next few days, I'm going to be taking the aptasias out. Basically, I zap them till they pull away, suck them out, and then they're gone. So
when we say aptasia, we're talking monster aptasia.
yeah, as you'll see in the pictures, there's an aptasia that's about this big and about this thick around. It's the mother of all aptasia. So
here's a question: when you fry that thing, do you have to worry about toxins? Like, you know how sometimes when people will like eliminate flatworms or whatever,
there aren't enough of them, and basically what the zapper seems to do is it causes them to pull away from the rock and end up taking off a fair amount of the body. I mean, it's 90% water or more. Right. So when I take it out, I just take it out, throw it away. I mean, I have the bulb based here and I can take it out fairly quickly.
Okay, good.
So what we're gonna do is, the way I designed this is it's basically this big flat rock sitting on a bunch of smaller rocks on a fiberglass rod. I'm going to try and lift this out. I don't know if this is gonna work or not. First, I'm going to move the light away.
And so again, the idea here is you ran out of room, these corals are going crazy, you need to drop everything low.
Yeah, because they're literally sitting at the surface, they're getting algae built up on them. They've basically, for the most part, stopped growing. When they hit the air, they're funny. They don't like to grow in air. Right. So I have no idea how this is going to lift.
We're gonna pause it right there, and I'm gonna get nice and close because I think you're gonna need my hands with this.
Yeah, that's what happens when you do this kind of major cleaning, is even though you think you've taken a lot of dirt out, dirt always finds a way to find the areas with the least amount of water flow. So even though I have a ton of flow in here, I obviously don't have enough, because as I fill into this rock, I can pull out this much gunk.
Right, look at that. Yep. And now, do you worry about, like, when you do like changes like that, like recycling, kicking back up?
No, there's enough space for bacteria in here. Taking out the detritus. Like I said, I do pretty much nothing in this tank. Right. and it still stays fairly stable. Here's a bit of dead sponge, which actually, when you find a lot of sponges in your tank, that means your tank is, from my point of view, very healthy.
Right.
When you don't find any sponge, that's typically a bad sign. Right. So finding the sponge was a good thing. Now putting the rock back in will be interesting. And as you can see, it is much lower. It's significantly lower than it was. And I'm going to leave some space for things. I'll move that over to there. Move that back. And then...
So what do you think you took out of 6 inches?
Yeah, easy. So it'll be interesting to see once the water clears. Because right now what I'm doing is just putting things as best I can, and without the water being clear, I can't really tell.
Right.
But yeah, you can see there's now, where this coral was hitting the top, there's now 3.5 inches
right.
between it and the surface, so there's a lot more space for it to grow. And here's some sponge. I'm gonna stick back there. Now that's the star polyps, which amazingly aren't like most star polyps in that they're not killing and growing over everything, and they also have a much nicer color. I've only seen this twice from my friend Jim at Eye Catching was distributing them, and he hasn't gotten them back in because I'd get them again.
Yeah, what are they, like nuclear? What's the...
I don't know the names. You know that. I'm not a name guy.
They definitely got...
Yeah, they have a lot more potential than the other typical star polyps.
Yeah, they bust on top or color, and then they don't grow. Just perfect. And so now, as you're doing this, so you're saying, okay, you know, you're not overly worried about the detritus or anything like mixing it up, you know, it's causing issues.
I'm hoping a fair amount of it will get sucked over the overflow and drawn in.
So that's why you didn't shut your pumps off when you were doing this?
Yeah, I wanted as much taken out of here as I can. And as soon as I'm done, I'm going to turn the power heads back on. And that will hopefully get things cranking again.
So now what about everything sliming up? Like, you know how you've got a couple of paleothon in there, and you know how they tend to slime up and that's where all the toxins are?
Yeah, hopefully that won't be an issue. And there's only 2 of them in here. So we'll see.
Right. But for somebody who's going to do this at home, and if they've got lots of...
If they got a lot of them, then you don't want them to touch the air. I really didn't want them to touch the air, but I really didn't have much of a choice. And I don't know whatever else is or where it is.
Hey, look at that. There's a nice little... I love those little things.
I don't like them at all because they tend to eat stuff, but I like the sponges. So we'll keep the sponges.
Oh, that's right. You had your issue with those guys eating your like Euphilia and stuff like that, right?
Eating the bases of acrofrags. I mean, they ate tons of them, so they're on my list. Once you're on my list.
Little brittle stars.
Yeah. I mean, no one else says it, but I mean, I saw them, took them out, added some wrasses that cleaned them out, and haven't had a problem since, so I can only assume.
Right.
You know, it may have been something else, but I don't know what it would have been.
Right.
Here we go.
So as you're picking them up, what are you looking for? Like hitchhiker kind of things, or you're?
I'm looking for things I don't want or like.
Okay. Like the brittle star.
Like the brittle star, like bristleworms, which I typically find and tend to nail my fingers, things like that. So the other thing we're going to do while we do this real quickly is we're going to put the lids back on because, as Russ has found out,
too many times.
You leave this open for 5 minutes, every really cool fish in the tank will find a way to jump out of it. So we try not to do that anymore. These lids have been a godsend. Only 1 fish snuck out of it, and I still have no idea how he did that.
Yeah, I remember that. Like through a wee little...
I mean, a ridiculously small hole. Well, one of the things you want are as many old towels as you can get. And I love Kohl's for their 30% off. I go buy towels and add new towels to my collection. And I do that all the time. So we're back. So it's been about half an hour actually, and you can see the tank is cleared up, not perfectly, but it's a lot clearer than it was after I found all the detritus that was underneath the rocks. But as you can see, the corals are now no longer at the surface, so probably in the next 3 or 4 months they will grow to the surface. There's now room and space for stuff. The thing I didn't mention though is on the other side you see one really big bubble tip anemone, and there's 5 other bubble tips in here. So the question is, why is that one so much bigger?
Because you put them in at the same time, they were same size.
Put them all in, they were all the same size, all different color variations, and that one actually didn't have any more bubbles than the other ones did. The secret is, I feed the fish over top of that every night, and I've done that deliberately, but I've only done it for the past month. So this isn't like a long-term thing, but simply by feeding that anemone every day a little bit of food, because most of the food gets blown over the top of it, but a few morsels make it down to it every day. It's probably tripled in size versus the other ones in relatively a month. So if you're planning on propagating anemones, obviously you want to feed them, and you don't even have to be that aggressive with feeding them. Like I said, it probably gets 2 or 3 mice of shrimp and a couple pellets a day, and one, it has much nicer bubble tips. It looks like a bubble tip versus the other ones. The coloration's great, but the growth is what's really exciting to me.
It is. It's like super bubble tip. I mean, you compare them, it's night and day, right?
Yeah, and what else is interesting is all the anemones were put into the same time. The one that has the biggest bubble tips is the one that the clownfish go in, which is also interesting because they don't really go into the other anemones.
Size matters.
Yeah, so they apparently like the bigger, more aggressive anemone that's in there. But what's interesting though is that when I feed the fish, the other fish will go above that anemone. It doesn't really seem to bother them. It isn't as aggressive as it would be, as I'm assuming, as if it were hungry. So when the rabbitfish, which are very aggressive eaters in here, go above it, I've seen them rubbing against the tentacles, and it really hasn't bothered them. So that also is something that's kind of interesting in this tank. That just sitting here and observing, just one simple month of feeding, what a difference it has made.
And you see it right away. I mean, it does.
Yeah, compared with the other 4 that are in here, it's like night and day.
So now on this guy here, so now that you move that down a little bit, right, you're just going to kind of let it grow in, or you're going to, besides killing the aptations, right?
Besides killing the aptation, I'm just going to let it grow in. I'll probably move a few things around. I gave them enough space, so hopefully they'll have 6 months. But I'm thinking that probably in another 6 months to a year, I'm going to have to drop it all the way down to the bottom and just let it grow up. There's only one rock underneath it now.
Right.
So there's not a lot of, I mean, when I put this in, it was going to be an SPS tank, and I wanted as much surface area, so I had it low. This is a 90 breeder, which is a kind of unique size of tank. So it had maximum surface area on the top to let sunlight in. But what it has is minimal depth. So, I mean, worst case, I could always go to a 120, which would increase the height here by 6 inches. But I don't really want to take everything out and redo it, because that's just... So, I mean, I probably still have 2 or 3 years of dropping this stuff down. But over time, I'm assuming everything is going to grow to the surface of the tank. I mean, and like I said, I'm doing very little in this tank. I mean, as little as I'm doing in any tank I've ever owned.
It's beautiful at night, and we have to get some video of this at night.
Yeah. At night, with the blue lights, this tank absolutely glows. And you're not seeing all the polyps open and all the corals, all the leather corals especially. But at night, everything's open. I mean, it's funny that during the day when the main sunlight's on, they start to open. But then at night, when it gets darker, everything opens up, which is contrary to what I've experienced in the past. And when I've been on the reefs, is that the leather corals are open at day and close up at night. Here, they do the opposite. So I don't know the reason, but it's something else to look at.
And so now, it occurred to me on this tank, now you're not using like GFO or carbon, are you?
No.
Okay, all right, so you just have the miracle mud coming through there, and then you have the 2 algae in there, right, the 2 macroalgae.
Right.
There. And then the skimmer.
Right.
And again, so you're not doing any of the carbon, and do you think that that's a reason why the softies are going,
yeah, I've tended not to run carbon in my softies tanks. And with the miracle mud in this, I mean, Ling was doing this 20 years ago. I mean, he had softy tanks that were just exploding with growth. So it's interesting to see, because, I mean, in here I have a blue symposium, which has grown from the size of roughly a nickel to where it's about the size of 2 fists in roughly 4 months. So everything that's soft in here has grown really well. I also just got in a orange scleronepthia.
yeah, that looks really nice.
That typically doesn't do well in a tank, but I'm hoping, because I'm not taking anything out, and twice a week I'm cleaning the glass and letting the algae blow around, then I'm hoping that that's enough to keep it alive. And it's right in where the current is, so it gets a fair amount of water movement on it. So we'll see how it does. I mean, but traditionally those have not done well in our tanks long term. But this has been in for 2 weeks, and so far so good.
It was healthy when it was today.
Yeah.
Although not before doing it.
It's not real happy with all the detritus blowing on it, but I got to move some things around here, obviously, to clean things up.
Good deal, sir. Any closing remarks?
No, I mean, if you want to do a simple tank, obviously do a softy tank. You don't have to really go nuts like you do with some of the other tanks. In my experience with this, as I said, this is all I'm doing. It's not anything elaborate. Everybody's pretty happy and healthy in here. So from my point of view, this is my old age tank. This is my retirement tank. This is a tank I'll have that I don't have to do much on. Like I said, a 10-gallon water change a month is not a big deal.
Right, exactly. And it's beautiful, right?
To me and everybody else that's seen it. Plus it's in a nice location, so.
Right, exactly. So stay tuned for the next episode of, I don't know, Mike's World.
We have lots of things left.
We're
We're going to AmericanReef, yeah, but we have a lot of things yet coming up, so.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mike.
Yep.